Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about stance width on the deadlift. This is something that comes up a lot, something I've made quite a few videos on, but based upon a lot of the comments and commentary, things I see, a lot of people are not familiar with that content. They don't know the reasons why we pick certain stances on the deadlift. Now, I happen to use a very, very narrow stance, and I tell most people to use a narrow stance. And of course, people will point out, but Jason, you have guys like Eddie Hall, you have guys like Halfthor, right? They use a wider stance on a conventional deadlift. So if they're that strong while doing it, why are you promoting the other? And that's a valid question, because if you don't know the biomechanics behind why they have to do it, based upon their build versus where most people will lift the most weight, it doesn't make sense. And so we need to address these things. And when we're talking about the stance width, we're only talking about the conventional deadlift. The sumo is a completely different animal. The stance width is done for a different reason, and the wider stance can actually slightly reduce the range of motion on a sumo. In addition to involving different muscles at slightly different ratios. Although that needs to be noted, that may not be as big as you think it is on the ladder. Okay, and the range of motion difference might not be as big as you think it is either. So what's going on with a narrower stance? Most people, let me rephrase this, most fit people will be able to deadlift slightly more with a narrow stance. And it has to do with a couple of different factors. It has to do, number one, with how wide you grip the bar. Okay, it allows you to get a grip width that gives you slightly more upright arms. When you go wider, you basically have to splay your arms out at a wider angle so that you can clear your knees and legs. Because you want to really mess up a deadlift, have your legs push against your arms. Right? If your legs push actively outward against your arms on a deadlift, you're going to miss a lot of lifts. You're going to bleed a lot of energy. You're going to miss lifts a lot easier doing that. Okay, particularly when you're not strapped up, because you're putting more side force shearing against your arm trying to grip the weight. It will mess with your grip. It can cause you to miss your grip on lifts. It can cause your grip to slip. In addition to the fact that the wider your arms go, just like when you guys see me do snatch grip deadlifts, and I am using way less weight for the same number of reps, like 50, 60 pounds less than I would do for rep work, if not more. Like for a 5 rep set, right? You guys have seen me do the snatch grip deadlift. You can't lift as much weight. We're increasing the range of motion, and we're increasing the range of motion at the bottom, which is the hardest part of the lift. It's the hardest part to get it started. Okay, when we take a narrower stance, and I want to come back to the point of, we'll get to in a minute why Eddie Hall and those guys have to do that. Their biomechanics require them to do that. You're not Eddie Hall, which you could see as a good or a bad thing. And I think when we get to that, you'll understand of just how strong these guys really are, that they have to take to, due to their structure, a disadvantaged position that makes them lift less weight, yet they still lift monstrous weights. That's a testament to how strong these beasts are. Okay, they're not doing it because it's an advantage. They're doing it as a disadvantage. Yet they're still just that strong. They're still that strong. But let's come over to the other point. Knee angles, knee position. When we take a narrower stance, we can turn our knees out more while still missing our arms. Why does that matter? Well, it matters for bar path. It makes it easier to clear the knee at the midpoint. In other words, we can have the center of gravity a little further back. Because the further your knees shut forward, easier it is to hit the knee, the further the bar has to swing. The further you have to lean forward. Again, puts you at a disadvantaged position through one of the traditional sticking points on the deadlift. Okay. Now, for hypertrophy purposes, none of this matters, by the way. The disadvantaged positions on some of these can be fine for hypertrophy. Now, the knee position, though, a little bit different, because that can put your back at a bad angle. All right, if we're trying to reduce shear on the back, that is a problem. But a lot of this other stuff we're talking about, if it just makes the lift harder and adds range of motion, it's not a big deal for hypertrophy. It matters for lifting maximum weight. But if we're going to do hypertrophy type deadlifting, we can just do deficits. We can do snatch grip work, and that's what we should be doing. If we're using generally the deadlift as a hypertrophy tool, these mechanical advantage positions aren't necessarily a benefit, because this is allowing you to lift more weight with the same amount of muscular force. Okay, we're just getting a mild leverage advantage. And we're doing so in a way that's easier on our low back. But I digress. Back over to the point. This also allows us, to the way that we drive, to get more pop off the floor. We can explode harder off the floor. Get the weight started quicker. Okay. And again, I want to come back to that other point. It's not necessarily for a noob to learn this who's using the deadlift just to help base build. Not necessary. When we start wanting to lift heavy weight, it becomes very, very valuable. So, to come over to the point, why do these guys have to go to the wider stance? They have a belly. They have a big belly. They're fat. Now, people say, I can't believe you called them fat. Well, they are fat. People call me fat, and keep in mind, I don't have a belly at all. I have a completely flat stomach. That skin you see pushing up is my belt tights pushing that little loose skin and a little bit of fat I have right there. Right? Not the same as having a belly. Those guys have an actual belly. The belly gets in the way. If you can't crouch down and squat down because your belly gets in the way with a narrow stance, you cannot do the narrow stance. Their fat's getting in the way. And that's one of the things you notice on the squat and the deadlift, and you should understand it. Powerlifting gives you a great example of this. As the weight classes go up in powerlifting, the gap between the squat and the deadlift gets smaller and smaller. And at a certain point, the fatter guys can oftentimes squat more than they deadlift. Now, how many of you out there can squat more than you deadlift? And I mean to depth. I don't mean because you're half squatting. Not many. Not many at all. And the leaner you are and the lighter your body weight, the larger the gap tends to be between your squat and your deadlift. Why? Because fat gets in the way. Now, obviously the squat benefits slightly more from gaining more muscle. So as muscle mass goes up, that tends to close the gap also. But when you're still earlier on in your development, and again, this is setting aside genetic freaks with really long arms and things, that matters. That's why Kaylor Woolham is so good at the deadlift, but he has a good squat, but he's an amazing world record holding deadlifter in a league of his own. But his squat's just okay. He's not much stronger than me on the squat, for example. All right, we're pretty close, real close. So he's a good squatter. It's like I'm a good squatter. I'm not an amazing squatter. I'm a good squatter, and so is he. He's not just a great deadlifter, he is in his own class. Right? He is his own class of deadlifter. He's got long arms. It matters. Setting that aside, everyone else, normal people with remotely normal leverages, as you gain body fat, your squat tends to go up easier from it. Your deadlift goes down. In other words, right now, if I were to take you as a person and magically transplant 30 pounds of body fat onto your body, with no trauma, and you just healed from it, no problems, right? It just magically was there and you're okay. Your squat would probably go up slightly. Your deadlift would probably go down slightly. Okay? We understand? And it's because with the deadlift, the fat gets in the way. Not only do you have to swing your belly up with the as extra weight, you've got to travel that weight up and swing it with the low back because of the position of where it is. That's a very, very minor effect, by the way. It's not like it's adding tons and tons of weight there. And you have to take the wider stance to get the weight moving. You have to, because your belly won't let you get into that position. You have to pull yourself down into it. So they take a wider stance. Okay? With the squat, we can compress down and you can compress your belly into the thighs. Right? The weight itself that's pushing you down will allow you to compress your belly against your thighs. So you got a big belly, you can sometimes squat a little more weight. Now, people say, but don't you have to move the weight of the belly with it with your body weight? Yes, but the squishing effect can usually surpass the negative effect of the belly there. So as we get fat, our squat tends to improve from it and our deadlift tends to regress from it. So that's one of the reasons too, the guys who have the most phenomenal deadlifts in a weight class tend to be relatively lean and they have long arms. Okay. Squats scale with body weight much better. But the belly matters. It affects your biomechanics and stance width and grip width and everything on a very, very serious level because the belly actually gets in the way physically. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.